The ship hummed quietly as it moved through the empty void of space, its silver hull reflecting faint glimmers of distant stars. Captain Alara Vance sat in the command chair, her hands resting lightly on the control panel. She had flown many missions in her life, some routine, some dangerous, but never one like this. Never had she been summoned personally by the Zelari Queen. The message itself had been brief, sharp, and terrifying in its tone. A summons, urgent and uncompromising for her alone. Alara leaned back, letting her mind wander over the details she knew. The Zelari were a species older than humanity had any record of. Their intelligence was unmatched, their technology decades, if not centuries, beyond Earth's most advanced designs. The Queen herself was a figure of legend, towering, majestic, and feared throughout the galaxy. The very idea of standing before her was enough to make most envoys hesitate. But hesitation was a luxury Alara could not afford. She had a duty and she would not fail it. The message replayed in her mind. It had been simple. "Captain Vance, you are summoned. Your presence is required on my flagship. Come alone, do not be late. You have caused me concern." Concern. That word alone carried weight when coming from the Queen. To humans it might sound mild, almost polite, but to anyone familiar with Zelari speech it was a warning, an expression of a deep and simmering anger. Alara adjusted her jacket, straightening her posture. Her crew had insisted on accompanying her, but she had refused. A summoning of this magnitude was not a diplomatic negotiation. It was a test, and she had to face it alone. She had trained her entire life for moments like this, yet a small part of her still felt the pull of fear. Not fear of death. The Zelari did not often kill on a whim, but fear of failure. Fear of disappointing her people, and worse, of giving the Queen a reason to strike at Earth. The journey was silent but tense. Outside the viewport, the stars moved past in slow, steady motion, each one a distant sun in a galaxy full of mysteries. Alara allowed herself a small smile, thinking of how fragile humanity must appear from out here. A blue and green planet, barely noticeable among the vastness, yet brimming with life, with ideas, with defiance. Humanity had survived wars, plagues, and disasters that had wiped out species on countless other worlds. Somehow, the people of Earth endured, thrived, and adapted. That resilience had drawn the attention of the Zelari in the first place. The ship's communication panel chimed softly. Alara tapped it, and the face of her liaison officer appeared. "Captain Vance," said the officer, voice steady but tinged with respect. "You are approaching the Zelari flagship. All systems are functional and their sensors have confirmed your arrival." "Understood." The Queen's ship alone was the size of a small moon, its surface covered in strange geometric patterns that shimmered as if alive. The smaller ships moved around it like guardians, silent and precise. Alara's heart beat a little faster. She had seen pictures, models, and simulations, but nothing could prepare her for the reality. The Zelari did not build ships like humans did. Their creations seemed almost organic, as if grown rather than constructed. And the Queen's presence radiated from the ship itself, a sense of awareness that pressed against her mind, subtle but undeniable. She docked her ship carefully, the magnetic clamps locking her vessel into place. The chamber she was led into was unlike anything she had seen before. It was vast, suspended in zero gravity, filled with a soft, glowing light that shifted colors in ways her eyes could barely track. She floated slightly as she moved, her uniform designed to accommodate the artificial gravity adjustments. But even then, she felt a sense of awe. At the far end of the chamber, the Queen waited. She was taller than any human could imagine, her form elegant and terrifying. Her skin shimmered like liquid metal, and her eyes were deep pools of color, shifting and swirling like distant galaxies. When she spoke, her voice was low, resonant, and full of power. "You have come," the Queen said, her words smooth but edged with something dangerous. "I am displeased yet curious." "Come closer." "You humans are bold," the Queen said finally. "You act with audacity no other species possesses, and yet you survive where others would fail. That is troubling. Humanity has always sought to cooperate with the Zelari, to maintain peace. And yet you call it survival. Sometimes the unexpected is the only way to survive." But she knew better than to think the meeting was over. The Queen's mind moved faster than any human could follow, and one wrong phrase could end everything. "I am honored by your attention, Your Majesty," she said. "If there is any threat to your people or your plans, I would gladly offer my service to correct it. It is not my plans that concern me. It is the unexpected outcomes of your species. You find solutions where there should be none. You bend circumstances to your will, and yet you are bound by weakness, by emotion, by your fragility. That is fascinating. The Zelari had summoned her to gauge something deeper, humanity itself. Their resilience, their unpredictability, their ability to challenge logic with creativity. And so far, humans had passed this invisible test simply by existing as they did. Your Majesty, Alara said carefully, if your interest is in understanding humanity, I am prepared to explain what we are capable of. But I also believe that the greatest strength of my people is not just survival or strategy. It is the capacity to adapt, to learn, and to rise when others fall. We may be fragile, but we are resilient. And yet, do you understand the danger you face by declaring your resilience? Do you understand that even a single miscalculation could erase all that you call home? We have survived the impossible before, and we will continue to do so. It is troubling yet admirable. You will remain here for observation, the Queen said finally, her voice calm but resolute. I will see what your people can do, and perhaps we will discover the truth of your audacity. I will do my best to represent humanity faithfully. We shall see if your audacity can survive them. Humans had been underestimated, as always, and they had survived. As she was led to a chamber where she could rest and prepare, Alara looked out through the vast windows of the flagship. The stars stretched endlessly, the darkness dotted with light, and somewhere out there, dangers and wonders awaited. She allowed herself a thought that she would not admit to anyone but herself. Humanity had always risen to the impossible, and now even the Queen had begun to understand it. The soft hum of the ship, the distant pulse of alien energy, and the quiet thought of her people on Earth filled her mind. The Queen had summoned her, and humanity had answered, not with fear, but with courage. And in that courage lay the seed of something greater. The galaxy would soon know that humans were not just survivors. They were challengers, thinkers, and creators. Alara closed her eyes briefly, letting the weight of the moment settle. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. But for now, she allowed herself the quiet satisfaction of having faced the most powerful being she had ever encountered and survived. And in the silence of space, among stars that had existed long before humanity, she felt the quiet thrill of hope. Humanity had been noticed, and that was the first step toward greatness. Alara woke to the soft hum of the flagship, the ambient light shifting gently as though breathing. Her sleep had been restless, filled with half-formed images of the Queen's eyes, the colossal fleet, and a feeling of being measured in ways that went beyond physical scrutiny. She rose carefully, floating in the low-gravity chamber, and made her way to the observation windows. The view was breathtaking. The Zelari fleet stretched endlessly, ships arranged in patterns that were more art than military formation. Every craft seemed alive, responsive, and synchronized in ways that human technology could barely replicate. It was intimidating, yet there was a strange elegance to it, a rhythm that hinted at intelligence far beyond what she had encountered. A soft chime announced her first audience of the day. The Queen had summoned her again. Alara's heart quickened, but she steadied herself. This was not just a meeting. It was a test, a challenge, and perhaps the most important moment of her career. She navigated the corridors, each step accompanied by the quiet echo of advanced machinery humming beneath the surfaces. She entered the throne chamber once more. The Queen waited, towering and resplendent, her form shimmering as if light and matter were woven together. The atmosphere was charged, subtle vibrations brushing against her mind like whispers of an unseen current. Alara took a careful bow. "You return," the Queen said, her voice resonant and commanding. "Do you come to explain, or do you come to falter? Convince me that your audacity is not simply recklessness. Show me that humanity deserves its place among intelligent life in this galaxy." Every misstep, every half-truth could have consequences for millions back on Earth. "Humanity," she began, "has survived because we embrace challenges that others avoid. We innovate when faced with scarcity. We act when others hesitate. Our strength is not in sheer power, but in adaptability, cooperation, and the ability to learn from every failure. We do not always succeed, but we persist. That persistence has allowed us to thrive in environments that are, by all other standards, impossible for our species. We analyze, adapt, and find ways to circumvent what seems insurmountable. We think creatively and we act decisively. And when we fail, we learn. That cycle, repeated endlessly, allows us to achieve outcomes that seem improbable, even to more advanced civilizations. Then, almost imperceptibly, her eyes brightened. Improbable outcomes, she murmured. Your species thrives not by strength alone, but by the unexpected, curiosity, persistence, risk. You do not fear failure, you embrace it as a lesson. Fascinating. Her curiosity could shift to anger in an instant if she felt humanity had misrepresented itself. Your Majesty, humans have survived not by brute force, but by strategy, ingenuity, and cooperation. Even when faced with threats far greater than our capabilities, we find ways to endure and overcome. Your words, they are accurate, yet I must see proof, not rhetoric. Demonstrate to me the ingenuity that allows your species to survive where others fail. Walls of glowing energy materialized, forming simulations and holographic representations of conflicts, disasters, and scenarios across countless worlds. Entire battles unfolded in miniature before Alara's eyes. The Queen had constructed a series of trials, an examination of human decision-making under pressure. The first scenario was a planetary conflict. A world was under siege, its defenses overwhelmed by a superior force. Alara studied the situation quickly, analyzing the variables. She adjusted strategies in her mind, considering what humans would do, leverage terrain, predict enemy behavior, and use unconventional tactics. With careful planning, she manipulated the simulation. Human strategies, though unconventional, allowed the planet to survive. The Queen watched silently. Interesting, you prioritize adaptability over brute strength, yet that is expected. How do you justify risk when failure could be catastrophic? We rely on observation, improvisation, and timing. If we avoided all risk, we would never progress. The galaxy demands more than caution. It demands action, informed by intelligence. Fascinating. The Queen's voice resonated through the chamber. You do not merely survive, you convert danger into opportunity. That is alarming yet impressive. You learn, adapt, and exploit circumstances that would crush others. Humanity is unlike any species I have encountered. The Queen was acknowledging humanity's ingenuity, but her tone still carried caution. Curiosity could be a dangerous weapon when wielded by one so powerful. Your Majesty, humans excel because we value learning, collaboration, and creativity. Where others see limitations, we see possibilities. Where others see failure, we see lessons to apply in the future. Because disadvantage is often where humanity thrives. It forces us to think differently, to innovate, and to act decisively. We do not rely on being the strongest, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. We rely on being clever, resilient, and willing to take risks that others would not. The Queen studied her with a careful, piercing gaze. Clever, resilient, willing to risk. You speak with conviction, Captain Vance. I sense that your species possesses qualities I have not fully understood, and yet I remain unconvinced that you are ready to face true threats beyond your homeworld. Your Majesty, I am not merely speaking of survival on Earth. Humanity has faced countless challenges, some natural, some imposed by others, and we have always adapted. We do not merely endure threats, we respond, learn, and grow stronger. That is our strength. We do not rely on luck, we rely on action guided by intellect, creativity, and courage. It is troubling yet admirable. Your Majesty, Alara said carefully, if your goal is to understand humanity, I am prepared to continue demonstrating our capabilities. But I must ask, what is the purpose of these tests? Are they only to observe, or is there a greater challenge ahead? The galaxy is vast, Captain Vance, and it holds challenges beyond your species' current comprehension. I summoned you not merely to assess audacity, but to understand whether humans can contribute to matters that require unconventional thinking. You may find that your kind is needed in ways you cannot yet imagine. The Queen was speaking of something beyond diplomacy, beyond survival. Something significant, perhaps dangerous, perhaps monumental. Your Majesty, humans have always risen to challenges that seemed impossible. We have faced threats beyond our comprehension and have adapted to survive. If there is a task, we will approach it with courage, intelligence, and cooperation. It shifts, and the challenges you face will test every quality you claim to possess. Perhaps you will rise, perhaps you will fall. That remains to be seen. She would represent her species with every ounce of skill, intelligence, and courage she possessed. Failure was not an option, not for herself, and not for the millions who depended on her. As the simulations resumed, Alara prepared to demonstrate every facet of human ingenuity, strategy, and resilience. Each trial was a chance to prove that audacity, when guided by intelligence and cooperation, could achieve outcomes that even an advanced civilization like the Zelari could not anticipate. She would show the Queen that humans were more than mere survivors. They were thinkers, innovators, and a force that could challenge the expected, bend the impossible, and rise above limitations. The first hours passed in a blur of analysis, decision-making, and improvisation. Alara adapted, predicted, and maneuvered through scenarios designed to overwhelm any species reliant on brute strength or rigid protocols. And in each instance, humanity's methods, unorthodox, creative, and daring, succeeded where conventional approaches would have failed. Finally, the Queen spoke again, her voice carrying a tone that was neither approval nor anger, but a mixture of awe and contemplation. Your species defies expectation. You are flawed yet brilliant, fragile yet resilient, reckless yet precise. This is unexpected. Perhaps there is more to your audacity than I realized. The first step had been taken. Humanity's strength, resilience, and ingenuity had not only survived the Queen's scrutiny, they had begun to earn her respect. And yet she knew the road ahead was longer, harder, and filled with challenges that would test every quality that made humans human. She floated back to her temporary quarters, exhausted but exhilarated. The Queen's trials were far from over, but Alara felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity had been noticed, tested, and had impressed. The future was uncertain, but one truth remained clear. Humans had the audacity to survive, the intelligence to adapt, and the courage to rise above impossibility. And in that truth lay the beginning of a story that would not only challenge her species, but might redefine humanity's place in the galaxy. Alara woke to another quiet hum of the flagship, but this time the air felt heavier, as if the ship itself sensed the weight of what was to come. The Queen had paused the earlier simulations, but there was no doubt that the next phase would push her limits further. She floated toward the observation deck, her eyes tracing the Zelari fleet below, which glimmered like a field of living jewels. Every ship seemed to pulse with intelligence, responsive to the Queen's unspoken command. A soft chime indicated that the Queen was summoning her again. Alara straightened her uniform, taking a deep breath to calm the flutter in her chest. She had survived the first trials, demonstrated humanity's ingenuity, and impressed the Queen, but she knew the next steps would be harder. Humans had earned attention, but now they had to earn trust, and perhaps something even greater. The chamber awaited her. As she entered, the Queen rose slightly, her massive form floating above the floor, shimmering in colors that shifted like sunlight through water. The ambient light pulsed as the Queen's eyes focused on her. "You return," the Queen said, her tone holding both curiosity and warning. "You have demonstrated ingenuity, resourcefulness, and resilience. Yet resilience alone does not define a species. I will now test whether your audacity extends to action under conditions that defy expectation." The walls dissolved into a three-dimensional projection of a sector of space, filled with asteroids, planets, and star systems. Entire fleets of Zelari ships appeared, moving with precision, accompanied by holographic enemy forces that seemed almost alive. "This is no simulation," the Queen said. "These are challenges drawn from actual conflicts I have observed. You will direct human tactics against these scenarios. Success is not merely survival, it is effectiveness, adaptation, and foresight. Fail, and the consequences are theoretical for now, but real enough in implication." They were exercises in real-time strategy, testing the limits of human decision-making. And they were unpredictable in ways that even her best simulations could not prepare for. The first scenario involved a colony planet under attack by a hostile species whose technology rivaled the Zelari in some respects. Human forces were limited, and the planet's environment was hostile, thick, toxic atmosphere, unstable tectonics, and unpredictable weather patterns. Alara studied the data carefully. Humans thrived in adversity, she reminded herself. They had survived conditions that should have destroyed them. They had always found a way. She issued orders using the tools the Queen had provided. The humans in the simulation were not ordinary soldiers. They were strategic thinkers, engineers, and innovators. Using their limited resources, they improvised traps, redirected energy flows, and manipulated terrain to their advantage. The enemy advanced with precision, but Alara anticipated moves, countered attacks, and forced retreats. By the end, the planet survived, and the enemy withdrew in confusion and frustration. The Queen observed silently, her immense eyes following every decision, every adaptation. "Unexpected," she murmured. You exploit variables no other species considers. You manipulate circumstances rather than dominate them. Fascinating. A massive derelict spaceship, previously thought lost, had appeared near a pulsar. The ship contained both technological artifacts and unknown dangers. Human scientists in the simulation were tasked with retrieving the artifacts without triggering catastrophic reactions. Alara guided them carefully, making decisions based on incomplete data, predicting hazards, and improvising solutions when unforeseen dangers appeared. At one point, a sudden radiation surge threatened to destroy the vessel, but the human operators responded with an unconventional solution, using magnetic fields to stabilize the interior and reroute power through unconventional conduits. The Queen's eyes widened slightly. "You adapt," she said almost aloud to herself. "You convert danger into opportunity. This is remarkable. Few species would survive such a scenario, let alone succeed." Humans had always thrived under such conditions because they relied on ingenuity rather than predictability. The third scenario escalated even further. A hostile fleet, far larger than the human force, advanced toward a resource-rich system critical to Zelari interests. Alara had limited command over human ships, most of which were outdated by Zelari standards. She studied the situation, searching for ways humans could prevail. Conventional strategies would fail, she knew. She had to rely on human unpredictability. Alara instructed her ships to use unorthodox formations, feints, and coordinated maneuvers that leveraged terrain, asteroid fields, gravity wells, and hidden ion storms. The humans anticipated enemy responses, set traps, and exploited weaknesses that Zelari algorithms might have overlooked. The enemy fleet was disrupted, confusion spreading among their ranks. By the end, the humans had forced a retreat, achieving victory against overwhelming odds. The Queen's voice filled the chamber, resonant and deep. "Your species thrives where others would fail. You do not overpower with strength. You overcome with intellect, strategy, and adaptability. You are unpredictable yet precise. Such qualities are rare." That recognition carried more weight than any medal, more than any diplomatic agreement. It was respect, earned by skill, courage, and ingenuity. The next trial was unexpected. The Queen presented a scenario that involved not just strategy, but moral decision-making. A colony of humans had been stranded on a planet with scarce resources, while another group, equally endangered, required immediate assistance. Every choice had consequences, and there was no clear solution. Alara had to balance survival, ethics, and long-term strategy. She weighed the options carefully. Humans were capable of sacrifice, but they also valued ingenuity. Instead of choosing one group over another, she directed human engineers to develop a rapid transport system using limited resources, devising a solution that saved both groups. It was risky, demanding precise timing and coordination, but it succeeded. The Queen's eyes narrowed, swirling with contemplation. "You act with both reason and empathy. You do not merely survive, you consider the consequences of your actions on others. Few species possess such qualities. That is remarkable." Every decision reflected the strength of a species that could think, learn, and act beyond expectation. As the day progressed, the Queen introduced further trials, strategic puzzles, survival scenarios, and encounters with hostile civilizations that required diplomacy, negotiation, and innovation. In each case, humans performed not merely adequately, but brilliantly. They adapted to the unpredictable, leveraged creativity, and displayed courage that defied conventional logic. At one point, the Queen herself intervened, observing closely as Alara directed a human task force to prevent a catastrophic planetary collision. The task force, limited in resources and knowledge, implemented an unorthodox solution, using a combination of gravitic manipulation and calculated detonations to redirect debris safely. The Queen's eyes widened in what seemed almost like astonishment. "You see," Alara said quietly to herself, "humans survive because we refuse to accept impossibility. We find solutions where none exist." It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it carried a quiet sense of triumph. Humans had survived the first true challenge posed by the Queen, not by force, but by ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. And the Queen had recognized it. But even as she floated back to her temporary quarters, Alara knew that this was only the beginning. The Queen's fascination was far from simple approval. Fascination could lead to trust, yes, but it could also lead to further scrutiny, greater trials, and challenges that would test humanity to its core. She had proven ingenuity and courage today, but tomorrow might require even more strategy, resilience, and leadership under conditions that defied imagination. Alara reflected on what she had learned. Humans had survived countless challenges on Earth, wars, natural disasters, pandemics, and the limits of their own ingenuity. They had done so because they adapted, learned, and cooperated in ways that no other species could. The Queen's trials were a microcosm of the challenges the galaxy would pose, and humans had shown that they could rise to meet them. And yet she understood one undeniable truth. The Queen was testing not just survival, but the very essence of humanity. Creativity, intelligence, courage, moral judgment, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. These qualities defined humans. And they were being observed by one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, whose perception could determine the future of her species. Alara knew that she would have to continue proving humanity's worth, not with words, but with action. Every decision, every solution, every creative response to the unexpected would be a testament to the audacity, resilience, and brilliance of her people. She felt a surge of determination. Humans had always been underestimated, often dismissed as fragile or limited. But they had always risen, finding ways to survive, adapt, and thrive against odds that should have destroyed them. Floating above the deck, she gazed at the stars stretching endlessly beyond the flagship. Each one represented a challenge, a possibility, a test of humanity's ingenuity and courage. And for the first time, she felt the quiet thrill of anticipation, not fear but readiness. Humans were capable of rising to the impossible, and the Queen was beginning to see that truth. Alara allowed herself a single thought, private and resolute. Humanity would not merely survive. They would endure, adapt, and rise above every challenge the galaxy could present. They would prove audacity, ingenuity, and resilience not through force alone, but through intelligence, creativity, and the courage to act when others would hesitate. And perhaps, through these trials, the Queen would not only recognize their strength but come to respect it. Humanity had been noticed. Humanity had survived. And now, in the vastness of space, among the stars and alien fleets, they would begin to show the galaxy what it truly meant to face the impossible and rise. Alara floated in the observation chamber, staring at the vast array of stars beyond the flagship. The Queen had paused the simulations for the day, but Alara knew this pause was not a rest. It was a preparation. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with expectation. Whatever came next would not only test human ingenuity, but perhaps something far greater. The soft chime of the chamber's alert system sounded, and Alara immediately moved toward it. A voice filled the room, smooth and resonant, echoing in every corner. "Captain Vance," the Queen said, "you have demonstrated skill, creativity, and adaptability. You have survived tests that no other species could endure. But there is a matter that cannot be addressed by simulations alone. A threat approaches, ancient, cunning, and relentless. It challenges even the Zelari, and I summon you not merely as a witness, but as a participant." She had anticipated further trials, but this was different. The Queen was no longer asking her to demonstrate skill. She was asking for action, direct, decisive, and dangerous action. "Your Majesty," Alara said, her voice calm but determined, "whatever the threat, humanity will rise to meet it. We have survived countless crises on Earth and beyond. We will not fail. Now I will see if you can apply that ingenuity when the stakes are real. My scouts have encountered them, and even my best tacticians struggle to predict their actions. I summon humanity because you are unexpected, unpredictable, and your species thinks differently than any other I have encountered. Perhaps your creativity can find solutions my forces cannot." Ships of strange, almost organic design moved with unnatural coordination, attacking systems with speed, precision, and ruthlessness. Even the Zelari fleet struggled to contain them. Yet somewhere in the Queen's summoning there was hope. If humans could survive the impossible in simulations, perhaps they could do the same in reality. "We will help your Majesty," Alara said, determination hardening her voice. "Humanity may be unpredictable, but we are courageous, intelligent, and resourceful. We will not stand aside while the galaxy faces annihilation. You must act, plan, and innovate in ways no other species would dare. Are you prepared for such responsibility?" Alara took a deep breath, scanning the enemy formations. Unlike the simulations, this was real. Each decision would have consequences for millions of lives, both human and Zelari. The Queen explained the stakes. "The Taurian have taken planets in this sector, consuming resources and enslaving populations. My fleets are stretched thin. Conventional tactics have failed to predict their movements. Your species has shown ingenuity and unpredictability in simulations. I will allow you to command a human contingent, integrated with my forces. Succeed, and you may save countless lives. Fail, and the consequences are grave. Humans had survived countless crises on Earth by thinking differently, adapting, and acting decisively. Now that ability would be tested on an interstellar scale. The first operation involved defending a colony world on the edge of Taurian space. The planet's resources were critical for Zelari supply lines, and losing it would compromise the Queen's fleets. Alara studied the situation carefully. The Taurian were approaching with overwhelming force. Conventional Zelari defense would fail, but humans had always relied on ingenuity rather than brute strength. She devised a strategy that leveraged the planet's terrain, gravitational anomalies, and resource limitations. Humans and Zelari forces worked together, following her unconventional plans. Ambush points were set in asteroid fields, decoy formations drew enemy ships into traps, and improvised energy pulses disrupted the Taurian coordination. Each move required precise timing, intuition, and adaptability, qualities humans excelled in. The battle unfolded with intensity. Taurian ships attacked in waves, each more complex than the last. Human commanders improvised in real time, using unexpected strategies that even the Queen's scouts had not predicted. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Taurian ships were forced to retreat or be destroyed, the colony saved against overwhelming odds. The Queen observed silently. Unexpected, humans act with creativity and insight no other species has demonstrated. You have preserved the planet. Yet this is only the beginning. The Taurian are relentless. They will adapt, and you must adapt faster. Taurian forces were attacking a network of resource stations critical to Zelari logistics. Conventional defense would result in heavy losses. Alara devised a plan that combined deception, technology, and human ingenuity. Small strike teams were sent to disrupt Taurian sensors, using improvised technology to confuse their coordination. Meanwhile, larger fleets engaged in decoy maneuvers to lure the Taurian into traps. The operation required flawless timing and communication. Humans excelled in improvisation, adapting to unexpected enemy maneuvers and finding solutions in real time. Energy pulses disrupted enemy formations, asteroid fields were used to block advances, and human engineers devised devices to neutralize Taurian ships with minimal risk. By the end, the resource stations were secured and the enemy forced to withdraw. The Queen spoke, her tone carrying a hint of admiration. Humans are remarkable. You convert disadvantage into advantage, chaos into opportunity. Few species could achieve what you have. Yet do not mistake this for the end. The Taurian are persistent. They will continue to challenge all who oppose them. That combination allowed them to survive, and perhaps to turn the tide in ways no other species could. As the days passed, Alara led human contingents in a series of operations across the sector. Each battle tested creativity, strategy, and moral judgment. Humans coordinated with Zelari fleets, improvising solutions to problems that even advanced algorithms could not predict. They saved lives, preserved critical systems, and disrupted Taurian operations with daring tactics. The Queen observed closely, her expression unreadable. She had summoned humanity to see if they could rise to a threat even she could not contain alone. And humans were proving their worth, not through brute force, but through intelligence, courage, and adaptability. At one point, a critical situation arose. A Taurian strike force had trapped a human fleet between two star systems with no apparent escape. Conventional tactics would have resulted in total destruction. Alara analyzed the situation rapidly, considering every possible variable. She devised a bold plan. Using the gravitational pull of a nearby star, the human fleet could execute a risky maneuver that no Zelari commander would attempt. Timing was critical. One miscalculation would destroy the fleet, but humans excelled in risk assessment and adaptability. They executed the plan flawlessly, slingshotting around the star to escape and launch a counterattack that disabled the Taurian strike force. The victory was daring, unexpected, and decisive. The Queen's eyes widened, her form shimmering with energy. Humans, you act with insight, courage, and precision. You take risks that others would avoid, and yet you succeed. You are unlike any species I have encountered. This audacity, it is remarkable. They had proven that human ingenuity, courage, and collaboration could overcome challenges that even the Zelari struggled to meet. But she also knew that the battles were far from over. The Taurian were vast, unpredictable, and relentless. Every operation required careful planning, bold thinking, and unwavering determination. Humanity's resilience would continue to be tested, and failure was not an option. As she prepared for the next briefing, Alara reflected on what had been achieved. Humans had been underestimated, often dismissed as fragile or limited. Yet they had faced impossible odds, adapted with creativity, and acted decisively when others hesitated. The Queen had witnessed their ingenuity firsthand and had begun to recognize humanity's unique strengths. And for the first time, Alara felt a deep, quiet certainty. Humanity had survived the impossible on Earth. They had adapted, learned, and persevered. Now among the stars, facing an ancient and merciless enemy, they were proving that same resilience on an interstellar scale. She allowed herself a single thought, firm and resolute. Humanity would not merely survive. They would endure, adapt, and rise to meet challenges that no other species could. And through courage, intelligence, and ingenuity, they would earn the respect of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Queen had summoned her, the Taurian threatened the galaxy, and humanity had risen to the challenge. The stage was set for what would come next, a confrontation that would test every quality that made humans remarkable. Alara floated back to her quarters, exhausted but determined. The trials of today had proven that humans could act decisively, think creatively, and survive where others would fail. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now she allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. Humanity had been noticed, tested, and respected. And in the vastness of space, among alien fleets and ancient threats, they had begun to show what it truly meant to face the impossible and rise. Alara awoke to the faint hum of the Queen's flagship, the stars outside shimmering like scattered gems. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of trials, strategy, and battles against the Taurian, and humanity had proven itself time and again. Yet she knew the greatest challenge was still ahead. The Queen had summoned her personally, and the tone of the message implied that the final confrontation would test not only human ingenuity, but their courage and unity on an unprecedented scale. The observation chamber stretched before her like a window to the galaxy itself. Planets, stars, and the Taurian fleet moved in a delicate and dangerous dance, each element a part of the Queen's test. Alara's heart raced, not with fear but with anticipation. Humans had always risen to impossible odds, and she knew they would rise again. The Queen appeared, her form towering and resplendent. The ambient light shimmered around her, casting reflections that seemed almost alive. "Captain Vance," she said, her voice resonating through the chamber, "you have demonstrated ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Yet the ultimate trial awaits. The Taurian have consolidated forces beyond what my scouts predicted. Your species must now act decisively to protect not just a single system, but the balance of this sector." The human mind, with its unpredictability and ingenuity, was their best hope. "We will succeed, Your Majesty," Alara said. "Humanity has faced impossible odds before, and we have always adapted, learned, and persevered. We will rise to this challenge." The lives of millions, perhaps billions, rest in the balance. The galaxy itself may depend on your species' audacity. While the Zelari relied on precision and calculation, humans thrived in unpredictability. That combination could turn the tide. The first wave approached a resource-rich planet under heavy Taurian assault. Alara directed human strike teams to maneuver through asteroid fields, creating ambush points and improvised defenses. Zelari warships engaged in decoy maneuvers, drawing Taurian forces into traps. Energy pulses disrupted enemy coordination, and humans employed rapid improvisation to adapt when unexpected threats emerged. By the end of the engagement, the planet remained secure, and the Taurian fleet was forced to retreat. The Queen's observation was quiet, but her expression shimmered with recognition. "Humans, your species' unpredictability turns disadvantage into opportunity. Few species could achieve this. Your audacity is remarkable." Conventional methods would fail. Humans had always excelled under pressure, finding solutions when others could not. Alara devised a plan that leveraged speed, deception, and ingenuity. Small human teams conducted surgical strikes against key Taurian command ships, disrupting coordination. Energy fields were manipulated to redirect attacks away from critical targets, while Zelari fleets executed coordinated maneuvers that exploited openings created by human innovation. Each move required precise timing, risk assessment, and adaptability. The operation unfolded like a symphony of chaos and order. Taurian attacks were countered, colonies were preserved, and human creativity turned the tide at every stage. By the end, the sector had stabilized, though the Taurian forces remained a persistent threat. The Queen's voice resonated through the chamber. Your species has proven invaluable. You do not merely follow instructions. You adapt, innovate, and act decisively. This is rare even among advanced civilizations. Humanity may be more capable than I anticipated. The final confrontation approached. The Taurian had consolidated into a massive fleet, targeting a critical Zelari stronghold that, if destroyed, would compromise the sector entirely. Alara's role was to lead the human contingent and coordinate with the Zelari forces to protect the stronghold and defeat the Taurian advance. She studied the battlefield carefully. The Taurians' movements were deliberate, yet predictable in ways they did not expect. Humans could exploit gaps, anticipate overextensions, and create opportunities where brute force would fail. Alara issued orders with clarity and confidence, relying on the ingenuity and courage of human commanders. The battle erupted with intensity. Taurian ships moved with lethal precision, attacking in waves designed to overwhelm. But human ingenuity turned the battlefield into a dynamic environment. Asteroid fields were used to channel enemy ships, energy fields disrupted coordination, and rapid improvisation allowed human and Zelari forces to adapt to every unexpected maneuver. At one critical moment, a Taurian dreadnought broke through defensive lines, threatening to destroy the stronghold. Alara's mind raced, considering every possible solution. Using a combination of gravitational manipulation and human-engineered devices, the dreadnought was disabled and captured rather than destroyed. The move was risky, but it preserved critical resources and further disrupted the Taurian fleet. The Queen watched silently, her presence immense and imposing. Humans, you act with precision, intelligence, and courage. You take risks that few would dare, and yet you succeed. Your audacity, it is unmatched. Every wave of the Taurian fleet required adaptation, creativity, and cooperation. Humans had survived crises before by learning quickly, improvising, and acting decisively. That same spirit now allowed them to face a threat that spanned light years and challenged the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. As the final waves of Taurian forces were engaged, Alara orchestrated a daring maneuver. Using the gravitational pull of a nearby binary star system, human and Zelari fleets executed a coordinated attack that exploited enemy vulnerabilities. Taurian ships were drawn into traps, key command vessels were isolated, and the enemy was forced into retreat. The stronghold was secure, and the sector stabilized. The Queen's eyes glimmered with a mix of awe and respect. Captain Vance, humanity, your species has exceeded all expectations. You have survived where others would fail. You have adapted where others could not. You have demonstrated courage, intelligence, and ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. I recognize your species' worth. The Taurian threat had been neutralized, the sector preserved, and humans had proven themselves on a scale that few could imagine. Your Majesty, Alara said, her voice steady, humanity does not act out of pride or recklessness. We act because we are capable of learning, adapting, and working together. We survive, yes, but we also rise, and in doing so we become stronger. We will continue to face challenges, and we will continue to rise to meet them. Humanity is worthy of recognition among the galaxy's most capable civilizations. I have summoned you, observed your actions, and tested your species. I am convinced that humanity's audacity is not mere recklessness. It is a quality that can shape outcomes, challenge expectations, and influence the balance of this sector. Captain Vance, you have proven that humans are exceptional. Humanity will continue to strive, to learn, and to act with courage. We do not seek glory, but we will rise to every challenge that threatens our home, our allies, and the galaxy itself. You have acted decisively, intelligently, and bravely. I have observed, and I am convinced. Humanity is remarkable. You have my respect, Captain Vance, and the respect of the Zelari. The galaxy has taken note of your species' audacity. Humans had survived crises, adapted to impossible circumstances, and risen above challenges that would have crushed any other species. Now, in the presence of the Queen, their ingenuity and courage had been acknowledged and respected. Your Majesty, Alara said. "I will continue to serve as a representative of humanity, demonstrating our courage, intelligence, and creativity. We will rise to every challenge, defend our home, and act with integrity. That is our promise. And it will remember." And through it all, they had demonstrated courage, intelligence, ingenuity, and resilience, the very qualities that defined their species. As she looked out at the stars stretching endlessly beyond the flagship, she allowed herself a single thought, firm and resolute. Humanity would not merely survive in the galaxy. They would endure, adapt, and rise to meet every challenge, no matter how impossible. And in doing so, they would earn recognition, respect, and their rightful place among the stars. The Queen's presence, the Taurian threat, and the trials of this sector had tested humanity to its limits. Yet humans had risen, proving that audacity guided by intelligence and courage could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Alara knew that humanity's story was just beginning, a story of ingenuity, bravery, and perseverance that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Floating in the quiet of the observation chamber, Alara allowed herself a moment of reflection. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed, and tested, and yet they had triumphed. They had demonstrated that even a young, fragile species could shape outcomes, influence events, and rise above challenges that seemed insurmountable. The Queen's final words echoed in her mind. "The galaxy has seen your species' audacity, and it will remember." Humanity had survived, and humanity had risen. The stars stretched endlessly, full of possibility and promise. And among them, humans would continue to act with courage, intelligence, and ingenuity, shaping their own destiny and proving that audacity, when guided by wisdom and unity, could conquer the impossible.